In today's video, we are starting something new, the puzzle series. In each episode, I'll challenge you with some hand-picked puzzles, with the main focus of improving your calculation skills. For today's video, I have got 10 puzzles lined up. The rules are simple. Pause the video, calculate the position, then resume to check your answer. So, are you ready? Let's begin. Okay, so we have the first position on the board. It's white to move. Try to pause the video and try to find the winning sequence for white. Okay, so black's idea in this particular position is to capture the pawn on f3, bishop takes, and after queen cross f3, it would be a checkmate to the white king. The question is how to stop it and how to checkmate the black king. So if you found the move queen f7, congratulations. The idea is pretty simple. We want to capture the rook and checkmate the black king. In this position, black is having majorly 4 ways to counter up. For example, starting with rook cross f7 capturing the queen, rook a8 is a check, and eventually the h7 square is covered by the bishop. After rook f8, rook cross f8, the game is over for black. Going back, in this position, after queen f7, if black goes for playing the move rook b8, just moving the rook. Now white can go for playing the move queen h5 check, the king is forced on g8, bishop d5 check, and after king f8, queen f7 is once again game over for black. Going back, rook b8 is also not working. For example, if black goes for capturing the pawn on h4 with the queen. Now many of the players must be wondering, this is the move that was already not my candidate move. But it is a good try for black. After king cross h4, black can give a check with g5. After king takes it, rook cross f7. Black can go for playing up this position. But white is already winning in this position. Thanks to the pawn on h2, we can already push the pawn to the very end. Our king is already very active. The rook on a1 is already on an open file and white is already winning. But this is a good try for black. Going back, the main move, and if you found this move amazing, which is queen f1 check. Finding the best defense for your opponent is always the key. Queen f1 check, it's a check, and black wants to simply capture the rook. So in this position, if you first of all go for capturing the queen, that would be a blunder. Because after rook cross f7, now despite being 2 pawns up, this is already an equal position because it's an opposite color bishop. So it's not a great idea to capture the queen on f1. If you found the move king g4 or king g3 with the same idea, after king g4, black can give a check, and after king h5, you will realize now there are no more checks to the white king and the king is safe. So for example, once again our idea is to simply capture the rook. The rook have to move to g8, and now comes rook a8 with the idea of once again checkmating the black king by capturing the rook. The rook have to take the rook. After bishop takes the rook, it already looks like it's an opposite color bishop, maybe it's a draw. But it is not. White's idea is to simply come back with the bishop to e4 with the idea of simply checkmating the black king. So for example, black plays the move g6 check. Now king h6 is simply winning, but the move that I personally like is to simply capture the pawn with the queen. After queen g6, king g6, bishop f2, basically now we are going to put all the pawns on the light squares as we are already 2 pawns up. And now we are going to put our h5 pawn to h7 to block the black king. And that's exactly what happens. And now once the king is locked up, now we are going to get our king to d7 to attack the pawn on c7. And after bishop b6, now b4. And now you will realize the moment the bishop moves, we can simply capture the pawn. So black will play king to g7. But once again this is winning. Now we are going to use our h3 pawn to push it all the way to h6. If the king takes the pawn, we can make the queen and that's winning. The king have to go back, but after king c6, now the bishop have to move and we can simply capture the pawn and win the game. So that's how you need to find all the resources for your opponent, and that's the perfect way to solve a puzzle. So this was the puzzle number 1. So now let's move on to the puzzle number 2. So we have the puzzle number 2 on the board. Once again, it's white to move. Try to pause the video and try to find the winning sequence for white. Okay, what's happening? Black is currently a pawn up, and the rook is also attacked with the help of the knight. So how to continue this position with white? If you found the move knight cross f7, congratulations. After knight cross f7, white's idea is to simply capture the pawn on e6 with the bishop, and that would be completely winning position for white. So after knight cross f7, black is having majorly two options to continue the position. Black can either go for capturing the knight, or black can go for capturing the rook. Starting with capturing the rook, now we are going to simply recapture it back with the knight, attacking the rook on c8 and also the rook on b7. Now white is simply an exchange down in this position. Let's say black plays rook d7. We can't capture the rook because our own rook is pinned. So queen e5, and after queen e5, suddenly black's complete position is collapsing. We are threatening bishop cross e6 with a check, and that's game over. Black can try to play rook e8, as we can't really capture the rook because our own rook is pinned. But now comes bishop g5, attacking the queen. The queen have to move to f8, which is the only square for the queen. But now bishop cross e6 check. The king have to move to h8, and now a slow move like rook d2 wins the game. Why? Because now the rook is no longer pinned, as the rook is defended by the bishop, and now our idea is to simply capture the rook on e8. So for example, now the rook is not really having any safe square to move. So let's see, the rook takes the bishop, we take back the rook, and now white is simply a pawn up with a strong knight on d6, and that's completely winning position for white. So this was the puzzle number 2. So now let's move on to the puzzle number 3. So we have the puzzle number 3 on the board. This time it's black to move. Try to pause the video and try to find the winning sequence for black. Okay, so what's happening? Currently white is having a rook for the bishop and the pawn. So how to win this position for black? If you found the move bishop cross f2 check, congratulations. So after bishop cross f2, it's a check, and the white is having two ways to capture the bishop. If white takes with the rook, we can simply capture the rook on a5, and currently we are just 2 pawns up with the total winning position in the endgame. Going back, white captures with the queen, and it looks like it's still the same thing. We captured the rook, and once again black is 2 pawns up indeed. But now white is having some counter attack, which is knight cross e6, and if you found this particular move, I'm simply impressed. After knight cross e6, you can't really capture the knight because it would be a mate on f8. So how to continue the position? You can't even move the rook because after queen cross f7 check, king h8, queen f8 check, sacrificing the queen, and that would be game over for black. So the question is how to continue the position. If you found the move bishop cross g2, congratulations. We are simply attacking the rook. And now white can either go for capturing the bishop, or white can go for capturing the rook. If white goes for capturing the bishop, we can give a check, the king have to move, and we simply capture the knight. We are simply 2 pawns up with a total winning position. Going back, if white goes for capturing the rook in this position, we simply take the rook as well, and after takes checks, once again we are 2 pawns up with a total winning endgame. So this is exactly how you solve the puzzle number 3. So now let's move on to the puzzle number 4. So we have the puzzle number 4 on the board. Once again, it's black to move. Try to pause the video and try to find the winning sequence for black. Okay, so what's happening? Black has got all his pieces on the king side, whereas white is trying to checkmate the black king by capturing some pawns. The question is, how shall we continue? If you found the move bishop cross d4 check, congratulations. We simply capture the pawn by sacrificing the bishop in order to open up the rook on the g file. After bishop cross d4, white is having majorly many options. First, starting with c cross d4, simply capturing the bishop. We can simply capture on h2, and it's game over for white. The king can't capture the queen because the rook is defending the queen. The bishop is pinned as the king is hanging, and now the king is no longer having any square to run away. So c cross d4 is already losing. if white plays the move rook f2, trying to block the check. Once again queen cross h2, the rook and bishop, both the pieces are pinned. The king is forced to move, but now after rook cross g3, now black is a piece up. We can have a trade. The king goes to e2 so that if black captures the rook, white can capture the rook. But now we play rook e3 check. The rook is defended. The moment the king moved, we captured the rook, and now black is having more than enough material to win the game. So that's exactly how you solve the puzzle number 4. So now let's move on to the puzzle number 5. So we have the puzzle number 5 on the board. This time it's white to move. Try to pause the video and try to find the winning sequence for white. Okay, what's happening? Currently, black's idea is to simply capture the bishop. And if you try to move the bishop, you are getting mated on g2. So the question is, how shall we continue the position? If you started with rook cross e6, congratulations, it's a check. And now black is having two options, to capture with the king or to capture with the pawn. If black plays f cross e6, simply capturing the rook with the pawn. Now we are going to play the move bishop h6 check. And now it's a check, we are going to capture the queen, and that's game over. If rook g7, just bishop cross g5, it's a check, and white wins the game. Going back, f cross e6 is a blunder. If black goes for capturing with the king, now comes queen to e4 check. It's a check once again. You can't play queen e5 as the bishop will simply capture the queen. You have to go back with king d7. But now queen cross b7 check. It's a check. The king have to come back to e6. You can't go to e8 because the rook is simply hanging. You have to come on e6 and now rook e1 check. The king have to go on f5 and now simply queen e4 is game over for black. You can also play the move queen cross f7 check, king to g4, queen f3 check, king h4, queen h3 is also a checkmate. So if you found this, congratulations. So now let's move on to the puzzle number 6. So we have the puzzle number 6 on the board. It's black to move. Try to pause the video and try to find the winning sequence for black. Okay, so how to continue the position? White is having 4 pawns, black is currently a pawn up, but how to win this position? If you found the move e3, congratulations, a very strong move in this position. Our idea is very simple. We want to capture the pawn and make a queen, as that particular f1 square is defended by the bishop. So white is having 2 ways to continue the position. White can take the pawn or white can push the pawn. First, starting with taking the pawn, now the b2 rook is simply opened up to the g2 pawn. So now we can play the move rook to g6, which is a very strong move, with the idea of simply capturing the pawn on g2, and that's game over for white already. So for example, white can't do anything. For example, if white plays anything, we can simply capture the pawn. The f1 square is already covered, so after king h1, rook h2 check, king g1, getting the other rook, and that's game over for white. Going back, f cross e3 is not working. If white pushes up the pawn to f3, once again rook g6 with the same idea. Now g4 is the only way. We can simply take the pawn, with the idea of simply recapturing the pawn and giving a check and eventually the mate. So for example, if white pushes up the pawn to h5, another way could be to simply push the f pawn. First starting with h5 attacking the rook. Now we can even sack the rook. After takes, simply capturing the pawn, and that's completely winning. Just push the pawn and the endgame is completely winning for black. Going back, for example, if white pushes up the pawn to f4. Now bishop comes to d5. Now already there are a couple of ways to win, but the way I like it most is bishop d5. Attacking the knight. The knight have to move, and now comes the classy move, which is rook to a6. We sack the rook in order to give a check. White is having only one square. On h2, we give a check. The king have to come on g3. It's a check. Once again the only square on h2. A check. h1, check, h2, rook h3 check, king g1, rook h1 is finally a checkmate, as the f2 square is already covered by the pawn, which is insane. So this was the puzzle number 6. So now let's move on to the puzzle number 7. So we have the puzzle number 7 on the board. This time it's black to move. Try to pause the video and try to find the winning sequence for black. Okay, so what's happening? Currently white's idea is pretty simple. White wants to capture the queen and white would simply win the game. Whereas white's bishop is hanging on c6. So the question is, how shall we continue the position to win the game with the black pieces? If you found the move rook e8 check, congratulations. If you have also found rook h to e8, it's still the same thing. So full point for that, rook e8 check, the bishop have to take the rook cross e8 check. Now, king f1 simply loses because the queen is hanging. So white have to play the move king f2, and now there are two ways to win. If you found any of these two moves, you have got full point for that. If you found bishop c5 check, which is much harder to spot, because after king g3 you need to find the move queen h6, simply coming back with the queen. As the queen is simply hanging, you come back with the queen. Now the king is simply very weak on g3, so we are going to play the move rook g8, move the bishop, and completely winning position for white. Another way, or I would say the best way to win with the black pieces, if you found the move queen to e3 check. The king have to go on f1, and now comes bishop cross f3. Now once again two ways, white can take with the pawn or with the queen. If white takes with the queen, queen e1 is a checkmate. If white takes with the pawn, now comes bishop to c5, threatening a mate on f2. And guess what, there's no good way for white to defend it. White have to play king g2, a check, the king move, now queen h6 is a checkmate. Remember, you can't take the pawn because the queen is defending the pawn on f3. So with this queen h6, it's a checkmate. And this was the puzzle number 7. So now let's move on to the puzzle number 8. So we have the puzzle number 8 on the board. This time it's a white to move. Try to pause the video and try to find the winning sequence for white. Okay, so now this puzzle is a bit easy one. h3, simply attacking the queen. Now the queen is having two ways to go. On h5 or simply capture the pawn on g2. If queen h5, g4 and the queen is trapped, that's winning for white. If black goes for capturing the pawn on g2, now simply rook h2 wins. You can't play rook g1 because the h3 pawn is hanging. So simply rook h2, and once again the black queen is trapped. You win the queen and you win the game. So this was the puzzle number 8, a bit easy one. So now let's move on to the puzzle number 9. So now we have the puzzle number 9 on the board. This time it's white to move. Try to pause the video and try to find the winning sequence for white. Okay, so how to win this position? What's happening? So basically it's a fine position, but the king looks weak on e7. If you found the move knight c6 check, congratulations. Our idea is pretty simple. For example, if the king moves back, we can capture the rook on d8 with a check, the queen takes it, and after rook cross d8, the knight defends the rook and the game is over for black. Going back, if black plays the move bishop cross c6, capturing the knight. Now we play the move bishop cross c5 as the queen is no longer covering the c5 square. It's a check, the king have to move to e8, which is the only square. Now bishop cross c6 check, queen have to take it, but after queen cross d8, it's a checkmate, the game is over. Going back, in this position, the only move which is left is queen cross c6, but now comes bishop cross c6. If black takes the queen on d2, bishop c5 check, the king have to move, rook d2, the king have to move, takes, and white is simply a rook up with a completely winning position. If at the place of capturing the queen, if black plays the move bishop cross e3, it's still completely winning because of queen b4 check. Black was trying to complicate the things a bit, but after queen b4 check, we are simply a queen up, and that's completely winning for white. So that's exactly what happens in the puzzle number 9. So now let's move on to the final puzzle, the puzzle number 10. So we have the last puzzle, the puzzle number 10 on the board. It's a white to move. Try to pause the video and try to find the winning sequence for white. Okay, so what's happening? So black's idea is pretty simple. Black wants to take the queen, and once again white is simply better. Thanks to the pawn on f6, a good knight on e5, a good bishop on a3, the black king can't castle. But as you know, it's a puzzle, you need to find something. If you found the move queen cross g6, congratulations, a beautiful queen sack. We are simply a pawn up, we want to capture the pawn on f7, that would be game over. The only way for black to continue the position is to capture the queen, but now comes f7 check, king to d8 is the only square. We make a queen, the rook have to take it, rook takes, and guess what, that's a checkmate. The knight covers the d7 square, the bishop covers the e7 square, the rook attacks the king, and that's game over. So with this, we have wrapped up all the 10 puzzles of the puzzle series. Great job if you have solved most of them, your calculation skills are already improving. Tell me in the comments below how many puzzles have you solved and which puzzle was your favorite one. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like the video, subscribe and turn on the notification bell so that whenever I post a new episode of the puzzle series, you can once again solve these puzzles with me. So with this, thanks for watching and I'll see you in the next one.